The unusual request. Captain Jake Carter adjusted the strap of his combat vest, feeling the weight of his sidearm against his hip. The room around him buzzed with activity. Alien diplomats, human officers, and security personnel standing at attention. This was no ordinary meeting. It was the first high-level diplomatic discussion between Earth and the Veltraxian Empire, a powerful alien race known for their warrior culture and strict traditions. Jake had been assigned as security detail for Earth's delegation, but as he stood near the edge of the massive Veltraxian Grand Hall, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Veltraxians were tall, muscular beings with scales running down their arms and backs. They had human-like faces, but with sharp ridges along their brows and golden, slit-like eyes that glowed under the dim lights of the chamber. They were known to be proud, easily offended, and above all, deadly in combat. At the head of the room sat Princess Jarexa, a high-ranking Veltraxian diplomat and a key figure in the peace talks. She was unlike any Veltraxian Jake had seen before. Her build was athletic but curvy, and despite her intimidating presence, there was a strange elegance about her. The meeting had been going well, until she suddenly stood up and pointed directly at Jake. "You, human soldier, you will assist me now." Her voice echoed through the chamber. A heavy silence fell over the room. Jake blinked, unsure if she was talking to him or someone else. He glanced at General Riker, who sat at the Earth delegation table, but the older officer only gave him a sharp look that said, "Do whatever it takes to keep this alliance stable." Jake cleared his throat. "Assist you with what, Your Highness?" Jarexa stepped forward, her golden eyes locked onto his. "You will milk me." A stunned silence followed. Jake's brain short-circuited for a moment. He was certain he had misheard her. Did she just say milk? He glanced at the other Veltraxians in the room, but they remained perfectly serious. No laughter, no smirks, no indication that this was some kind of joke. His mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, you want me to do what?" Zarex's eyes narrowed slightly, as if offended by his hesitation. "I have made my request clear. Do not insult me by pretending ignorance." Jake felt a bead of sweat form on his forehead. He wasn't about to say no outright, not when an entire intergalactic peace treaty was at stake, but he needed more information before committing to whatever this was. "I don't mean to be disrespectful, Your Highness," he said carefully, "but I think there might be some cultural misunderstanding here. When you say milk..." She cut him off. "It is a sacred process. If it is not performed, my strength will fade, and my enemies will see me as weak." Jake stiffened. That did not sound good. The other Veltraxian warriors in the room shifted uncomfortably, their sharp claws clicking against the stone floor. Jake could tell that this was serious. Jarexa took another step toward him, her towering form making him feel like a cadet in boot camp again. "If you refuse, it will be seen as an insult to my people," she said, her voice calm but filled with warning. "An insult to me." Jake clenched his jaw. He had been in plenty of dangerous situations before, but this was something entirely different. One wrong move, and this diplomatic meeting could turn into an interstellar war. His earpiece crackled as General Riker's voice came through in a low whisper. "Carter, we need this alliance. Do whatever it takes. That's an order." Jake exhaled slowly. "What the hell have I gotten myself into?" He straightened his shoulders and met the alien princess's gaze. "All right," he said, trying to sound confident. "I'll help, but you'll have to explain exactly what I need to do." For the first time, Jarex's expression softened, just slightly. "Come with me, human," she said, turning on her heel. The heavy chamber doors opened, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor beyond. Jake hesitated for half a second before following her. The Veltraxian warriors watched in silence as he disappeared into the shadows behind a princess. His instincts screamed that he was walking into something far bigger than he had expected, and whatever was waiting for him at the end of that corridor. It was only the beginning. a dangerous cultural misunderstanding. The corridor was dimly lit, its walls lined with massive stone carvings of Veltraxian warriors in battle. Each statue loomed over Jake, their glowing golden eyes seeming to follow him as he walked. The air was thick with an unfamiliar scent, a mix of something metallic and earthy, almost like ozone after a lightning storm. Princess Shirexo walked ahead of him, her tall, muscular frame moving with an almost predatory grace. She didn't speak, didn't glance back, just strode forward with silent confidence, as if she expected Jake to follow without question. Jake's training told him that this was a high-stakes situation. Every instinct screamed that he was stepping into unknown territory, a moment where one wrong move could turn an intergalactic alliance into an interstellar war. And the worst part, he still had no damn idea what she meant by milking. His comm buzzed softly in his ear. General Riker's voice crackled through. "Carter, what's the situation?" Jake kept his voice low. "Still figuring that out, sir. I think this is some kind of ritual." But he hesitated, glancing at Shirexa's powerful frame ahead. "It's not what I expected." Riker sighed. "Listen, soldier. The Veltraxians are a proud race. If they see you as weak or disrespectful, they'll never trust humans. Whatever this is, handle it carefully." Jake clenched his jaw. "Roger that." Shirexa finally stopped before a massive set of engraved doors, guarded by two Veltraxian warriors in black ceremonial armor. They were easily 8 feet tall, their reptilian eyes scanning Jake, as if calculating how easily they could snap him in half. One of them stepped forward. "Does he understand what is required?" Jake tensed. Before he could answer, Shirexa spoke first. "He has agreed." The warrior let out a guttural snarl, but he stepped aside, allowing the doors to grind open. Beyond them lay a darkened chamber, illuminated by pulsing blue bioluminescent veins running through the walls. The floor was made of polished obsidian, and in the center of the room sat a large throne-like structure, carved from what looked like pure onyx and bone. Strange, humming machinery lined the walls, and in the middle of the chamber, a massive circular platform was covered in intricate golden symbols. Jake's gut tightened. This wasn't just a private meeting room. This was a sacred ritual chamber. Shirexa turned to face him, her gaze intense. "You are about to witness something no human has ever seen," she said, her voice quieter now, almost reverent. "You must understand the gravity of this." Jake crossed his arms, trying to look more confident than he felt. "I'm all ears, Princess. But first, can we talk about what exactly this milking involves?" A flicker of amusement crossed her face. "You think I speak of agriculture, of beasts and farmhands?" Jake shrugged. "The word means something very specific where I come from." Shirexa stepped forward, stopping inches from him. Up close, he could feel the heat radiating off her body, the strange energy humming beneath her skin. "My kind possess a rare biological trait," she said, her golden eyes locked onto his. "Once every cycle, my body generates a potent bioelectric substance, a core of raw energy that fuels my strength, my combat prowess, my ability to command. This energy must be extracted, or it will decay inside me, weakening me." Jake stared, processing her words. So this wasn't some weird Veltraxian kink. This was a biological necessity. "And you need me to, what? Operate some kind of machine?" Shirexa's lips curled into a smirk. "The machines are flawed. Too old. The process requires precision and control." Jake felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. "And you want me to do it manually?" She nodded. "Only a steady hand can regulate the flow. If the extraction is not done correctly, the energy could become unstable." Jake exhaled slowly. "And by unstable, you mean?" Her expression darkened slightly. "Painful. Deadly, even." "Great. Just great." Before he could protest, Shirexa took a step back and activated the chamber's central console. The golden symbols beneath their feet flared to life, and a low humming vibration filled the air. Jake felt the hair on his arms stand on end. The atmosphere in the room shifted, as if the very air had become denser, crackling with unseen energy. Then, to his shock, Sharexa began to remove her ceremonial armor. The heavy plated metal clanked against the floor, revealing her bare shoulders, her toned, powerful arms glowing faintly with a pulsating blue light. Jake immediately looked away, clearing his throat. "Ah, so this is happening, huh?" Sharexa rolled her eyes. "Do not be foolish. This is not an act of intimacy. It is a transfer of power, a warrior's duty." She pressed a hand against her chest, and from beneath her skin, a faintly glowing crystalline core flickered to life, pulsing, swirling with raw energy. Jake stared, his breath catching in his throat. It looked unstable. The light flashed wildly, crackling like a miniature thunderstorm trapped within her body. Sharexa clenched her jaw, her muscles tightening. "The process must begin soon, or the energy will consume me." Jake ran a hand down his face. All right. Just tell me what to do." Sharexa turned toward him fully, her golden eyes serious. "Brace yourself, human." Then, suddenly, the chamber doors exploded inward. A violent shockwave sent debris flying as masked alien warriors stormed in, weapons drawn. Jake had no time to think. Sharexa growled in fury, her energy surging wildly out of control. Assassins. Jake's instincts kicked into overdrive. He reached for his sidearm, dodging the first attack as a plasma blade swung inches from his face. The extraction had to wait, because right now they were under attack. And if they didn't survive the next 5 minutes, none of this would matter. The forbidden chamber. The explosion rattled the chamber as dust and smoke billowed through the air. Jake Carter barely had time to react before a plasma bolt whizzed past his ear, sizzling as it struck the wall behind him. His instincts screamed MOV, and he dove behind a thick obsidian column just as another round of blaster fire tore through the chamber. Sharexa, her body still radiating unstable energy, let out a feral snarl. The air around her crackled with raw power, tendrils of blue lightning dancing across her skin. She flexed her clawed fingers, and the ground vibrated beneath her feet. "Cowards!" she roared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You dare interrupt my sacred rite." Through the swirling dust, Jake could make out 6 heavily armed assassins. Their armor was sleek, dark, and bore no insignia. Mercenaries, maybe, or rival factions within the Veltraxian Empire. Their glowing visors reflected the blue light of Sharex's energy core as they spread out, taking tactical positions. Jake pressed his back against the column, his mind racing. They weren't just here to attack. They were here to kill Sharexa. And if she died, the fragile alliance between Earth and Veltrax 7 would be shattered. The battle begins. The first assassin lunged, a dual-bladed plasma dagger flashing in his hands. Sharexa met him head-on, her speed blinding. She sidestepped the attack and drove her fist straight into his chest, sending him flying into the chamber wall with a sickening crack. Jake took the opening. He rolled out from behind cover, raised his sidearm, and fired 3 precise shots. The first 2 hit a second assassin's shoulder plates, barely slowing him down. The third found its mark, right in his knee joint. The assassin let out a choked scream, collapsing as his leg gave out. But the remaining 4 were already advancing. "Carter, left flank." Sharex's voice cut through the chaos. Jake reacted instantly, spinning on his heel as a burly assassin rushed him with a vibroblade. He barely managed to block the strike with his forearm, his armor absorbing most of the impact. The assassin pressed forward, snarling, trying to force the blade into Jake's neck. Jake gritted his teeth, then drove his knee into the assassin's gut. The alien staggered back just enough for Jake to raise his pistol and fire point blank into his chest. The assassin crumpled, but there was no time to breathe. 3 more were still standing. One of them pulled a grenade-like device from his belt and hurled it toward Jarexa. Jake's eyes widened. "Princess, move." But instead of dodging, Jarexa did something insane. She caught the grenade in midair, and with a roar, she crushed it in her bare hands. The device sparked and sputtered before imploding, its energy harmlessly dispersing into the air. The assassins hesitated. That was all the opening Jake needed. He dropped low, sweeping the legs out from one, then fired a single shot into the second's helmet, sending him toppling. The last remaining assassin, clearly the leader, realized the fight was lost. He snarled something in an alien dialect before reaching for his wristband. Jake's blood ran cold. A remote detonator. Jarexa, he's gotta. Too late. The assassin slammed his fist onto the device. The walls trembled as explosives hidden in the chamber detonated. The collapse. The floor cracked and splintered beneath them. The once grand chamber shuddered, massive chunks of stone crashing from the ceiling. Jake barely managed to keep his footing as the ground caved in, plunging them into darkness. He hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. Dust and debris rained down. And for a moment, everything was silent except for the distant echoes of crumbling rock. Then, a low groan. Jake forced his eyes open. His body ached, but nothing felt broken. He turned his head and saw Jarexa lying a few feet away, half buried under a slab of stone. Her bioluminescent veins flickered weakly. "Princess." Jake scrambled to her side, gripping the edge of the stone. He pushed with everything he had, muscles straining, until the slat rolled off her with a heavy thud. Jarexa let out a sharp breath, blinking up at him. "I am still functional." Jake huffed out a relieved laugh. "Good, because I really didn't want to explain to your people that I let their princess get squashed." She sat up slowly, wincing. "The extraction. We must continue." Jake blinked. "Oh, princess, I think we've got bigger problems right now." Jarexa exhaled, placing a clawed hand on her chest. Her energy core pulsed erratically. "No, human, you do not understand. If we do not complete the process soon, I will not survive." The secret below. Jake scanned their surroundings. They had fallen into some kind of underground vault. Strange glyphs lined the walls, glowing faintly in the darkness. It didn't look like part of the palace. This was older, ancient. Jarexa glanced at the markings, her expression shifting. "We are beneath the sacred temple. This place is forbidden." Jake sighed. "Great. More forbidden places. Just my luck." She placed a hand on the wall, and suddenly the glyphs flared to life. A deep, resonating hum filled the air. The ground beneath them shifted, revealing a hidden mechanism. A massive pedestal in the center of the chamber, engraved with Veltraxian symbols. Jake took a cautious step forward. "What is this place?" Jarex's golden eyes flickered. "A forgotten relic of my ancestors, a place where energy was once harnessed, extracted." Jake narrowed his eyes. "You're saying this place can finish the process?" She nodded slowly. "Perhaps, but there is danger. The ancient ways are unpredictable." Jake exhaled, shaking his head. "Of course they are." Above them, the palace continued to collapse, tremors sending dust and debris raining down. Time was running out. Jake looked at Jarexa, her breath coming in shallow gasps, the glow of her energy core fading. They had two choices: try to climb out and escape, or risk using an ancient unstable device to extract her energy before it was too late. He met her gaze. "All right, princess. Tell me what I have to do." The extraction process. The underground vault pulsed with an eerie blue glow, the ancient glyphs whispering with energy as they illuminated the forgotten chamber. The air was thick with tension, charged with something old and powerful, something that had been waiting for centuries to be awakened. Jake Carter wiped the sweat from his brow, his fingers twitching against his sidearm as he examined the massive pedestal in the center of the chamber. The structure was carved from a smooth obsidian-like material, engraved with intricate Veltraxian symbols that pulsed in synchronization with the weakening glow of Jarex's energy core. She was on her knees now, her breathing ragged, the veins in her arms glowing erratically as unstable energy flickered under her skin. Jake knelt beside her, gripping her shoulder firmly. "Princess, stay with me." Jarex's golden eyes flickered weakly as she looked up at him. "We must complete the process. The core is overloading." Jake's stomach tightened. "Overloading? I thought the problem was that your body couldn't release the energy." She let out a weak, breathy laugh. "When the process is delayed, the energy does not simply vanish. It turns volatile. It is now consuming me." Jake swore under his breath. This wasn't just about extracting energy anymore. This was about saving her life. He turned back to the ancient pedestal, his soldier's mind rapidly assessing the situation. The glyphs carved into the stone looked similar to the symbols that had been glowing on Jarex's body, almost as if the machine had been built specifically to interface with her physiology. Jake traced his fingers over the engravings, feeling a faint hum of power beneath his touch. Jarexa gritted her teeth as another pulse of unstable energy crackled through her body, causing the chamber to shudder. Jake whirled toward her. "You're running out of time. Tell me how this thing works." She lifted a trembling hand toward the pedestal. "The ancient method requires a conduit, a second being to regulate the flow." Jake frowned. "A conduit?" She gave a weak nod. "If the device senses an imbalance, it will drain both participants evenly to stabilize the transfer. That is why the process was always performed in pairs." Jake's gut clenched. Wait. You're saying if I activate this thing, it's going to suck the energy out of me too?" Jarexa exhaled slowly. "Not in the same way. It will use your body to stabilize the transfer, to balance the excess power." Jake cursed under his breath. "And what happens if it takes too much from me?" She hesitated. "You may not survive." Jake let out a dry laugh. "Of course. Because nothing about this mission has been easy." He glanced up at the collapsing ceiling, dust and debris raining down from the battle above. If they tried to climb out, Jarexa wouldn't last long enough to reach safety. This chamber, this forgotten relic of her ancestors, was their only shot. Jake inhaled sharply, steadying himself. "All right, let's do this." Activating the ritual, Jake moved to the pedestal's central panel, examining the symbols. He recognized a few repeating glyphs, ones that had also been glowing on Jarex's body. He placed his palm over the largest engraving and pressed down. A low, rumbling vibration filled the chamber as the entire pedestal came to life. The golden engravings flared brighter, stretching outward across the floor in a web-like pattern. Jake turned back to Jarexa, who had managed to pull herself up onto one knee. Her breath was labored, her arms trembling. "Stand up, princess," he said, reaching for her hand. "We do this together." She grasped his forearm tightly, using his strength to pull herself up. The moment their skin touched, a sharp surge of energy coursed between them, making Jake's muscles tense involuntarily. Jarex's eyes widened slightly. "You are more compatible with the energy than I expected." Jake raised an eyebrow. "That a good thing?" She hesitated before murmuring, "We will soon find out." The pedestal's surface shifted, revealing 2 deep handprints carved into the stone. Jake took a deep breath. "I assume we put our hands here." Jarexa nodded. "On my signal." They positioned themselves on opposite sides of the pedestal, each placing their hands into the carved slots. A sudden pulse of energy erupted from the machine, sending shockwaves rippling through the chamber. The engravings beneath them began to glow brighter and brighter, forming a spinning vortex of golden light that connected them both. Jake gritted his teeth as he felt something pulling at his core, a strange, intense pressure flooding his veins. His heart pounded violently as his body tried to adjust to the sudden influx of alien energy. Jarexa let out a sharp gasp, her body jerking as the extraction process began. The trial of the conduit. The pain was instantaneous. Jake felt as though his very essence was being siphoned, his nerves alight with a sensation that was both fire and ice. His vision blurred, his breath hitching as the energy swirled between them, flowing from Jarex's core into the machine and back through him. He barely registered her voice over the roar of power. "Steady yourself, human." Jake clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. His legs threatened to buckle, but he held firm, his grip tightening against the stone surface of the pedestal. Across from him, Jarex's body convulsed, her golden eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The swirling energy was stabilizing, but the transfer wasn't complete yet. Jake fought against the overwhelming pull, forcing himself to control the surge of power. He could feel it now, the balance tipping, the line between draining too much and not enough. His arms burned, his heartbeat hammering violently in his ears, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't stop now. A final shockwave of energy erupted outward, causing the chamber walls to rattle violently. The pedestal glowed white-hot, and for a split second, everything went completely silent. Then, with a final blinding pulse of golden light, the machine shut down. The energy web dispersed, fading into the engraved floor beneath them. Jake's knees gave out, and he collapsed forward, catching himself on one hand. He felt like he had just run a marathon through hell. Every muscle screamed in protest, his lungs struggling for breath. Jarexa, however, was glowing. Her energy core, once flickering on the brink of collapse, now shone brilliantly, stable and controlled. Her skin no longer crackled with unstable surges, her breathing even, her posture stronger than before. She looked down at Jake, her expression unreadable. Then, to his absolute shock, she extended her hand toward him. "You have done well, human." Jake let out a breathless chuckle, gripping her wrist as she helped him to his feet. "Yeah," he smirked. "Then maybe next time, you can find a way to do this that doesn't nearly kill me." Jarexa tilted her head, her golden eyes gleaming. "Perhaps." But before either of them could speak again, a low, mechanical growl echoed from the depths of the vault. Jake's stomach dropped. Something else had been awakened. The awakening of the Forbidden Guardian. The low mechanical growl reverberated through the chamber, sending a deep vibration through Jake Carter's bones. He instinctively reached for his sidearm, ignoring the sharp ache still lingering from the energy extraction process. Jarexa stiffened, her golden eyes narrowing as she turned toward the source of the sound. From the darkened depths of the vault, the walls shifted, and massive stone slabs began to move. The ancient glyphs flickered wildly, their glow pulsating like the heartbeat of something waking from a long slumber. Then, a massive shape began to emerge from the farthest end of the chamber. At first, it was nothing more than a hunched, shadowy figure, partially obscured by the mist rolling across the floor. Then the glow of molten gold traced its form, illuminating its colossal body as it unfurled from centuries of dormancy. Jake's grip on his weapon tightened. "Princess, tell me that's supposed to happen." Jarexa didn't answer, because she was staring up at it in silent horror. The ancient guardian. A metallic faceplate came into view first, its intricate Veltraxian script glowing faintly as dust cascaded from its massive frame. A humanoid structure, but impossibly tall and broad, built from what looked like living metal fused with obsidian-like stone. And its eyes, two orbs of pulsing red energy, locked onto them with chilling awareness. Jake exhaled sharply. That's never a good color. The creature. No, the guardian, straightened to its full height, easily over 4 meters tall, its enormous shoulders adorned with spiked golden plates. Its arms were thick, ending in clawed gauntlets that pulsed with an internal energy signature, one that looked terrifyingly similar to the power that had just been extracted from Charexa. Then it spoke, a deep guttural voice that made the chamber walls shudder. Unauthorized energy transfer detected. The right has been violated. Chaurexa's expression hardened. No, the right has been honored. The energy was stabilized. The Guardian's red eyes flared. Only the High Keepers may conduct the right. Jake glanced at Chaurexa. Tell me you're a High Keeper. She hesitated. Jake's stomach sank. You're not a High Keeper. Chaurexa clenched her fists. They have been dead for centuries. The Guardian took a step forward, the impact shaking the entire chamber. Then the price must be paid. Its arms lifted, the energy within its gauntlets surging to life, forming crackling golden plasma blades that extended from its wrists. The Guardian's massive frame moved unnaturally fast, its joints shifting with mechanical precision as it locked onto them as targets. Jake's instincts kicked into overdrive. Move. The fight for survival. The Guardian lunged, one of its massive plasma blades cleaving downward. Jake barely managed to dive to the side, rolling across the stone floor as the blade sliced through the ground, leaving a glowing scar of molten rock. Chaurexa dodged to the opposite side, her body still surging with renewed power. She landed gracefully, then launched herself forward with an inhuman burst of speed, claws extended. She struck fast, her hands glowing with raw energy, aiming for the Guardian's joint plates, but the ancient construct anticipated her move. It twisted its massive torso, bringing up an armored forearm to deflect her attack. Chaurexa grunted in pain as she was flung backward, crashing against the far wall. Jake raised his pistol, firing a precise burst of rounds at the Guardian's head, but the bullets pinged harmlessly against its metallic surface. Of course, normal ammo doesn't work, he muttered. The Guardian turned its gaze to him, its energy blades humming louder. Then it charged. Jake had seconds to react. He ducked low, barely avoiding a swinging blade that sliced through the stone column behind him, turning it into shattered debris. He sprinted toward a broken section of the chamber, taking cover behind one of the ancient altars. Think, Carter, think. There had to be a way to bring this thing down. The weakness in the code. Chaurexa struggled back to her feet, her breathing heavy but her eyes determined. We cannot defeat it through brute force, she called. Jake peeked over the altar. I figured that part out already. Any brilliant ideas? She narrowed her gaze. It is a construct. It follows pre-programmed directives. Jake clicked his tongue. So we trick it. She nodded. The right is its primary function. It was activated because it detected an unauthorized transfer of energy. If we can force it to believe the right is still in progress, it may reset. Jake blinked. You're saying we BS our way out of this? Chaurexa smirked. More or less. Jake looked at the glowing pedestal, still warm from the extraction process. The engravings flickered weakly, like a machine caught in a loop. An idea clicked into place. If I can force the pedestal to restart the right, he said, it might override the Guardian's kill command. Chaurexa's gaze darkened. You are suggesting another energy transfer. Jake shrugged. I don't need to go through the whole process, just enough to make it think we are. The Guardian charged again, forcing them both to scatter. Jake bolted for the pedestal, his mind racing. He had no idea if this was going to work, but it was better than being turned into space dust. He skidded to a stop before the altar, then slammed his hand against the central engraving. The glyphs flared to life, sending out a resonating pulse that spread across the chamber. The Guardian froze mid-strike, its red eyes flickering. Jake held his breath. Processing. Chaurexa took a cautious step forward. The Guardian's voice dropped into a mechanical monotone. The right is incomplete. Participants must resume transfer. Jake let out a slow exhale. It was working. Chaurexa quickly moved beside him, placing her hand on the pedestal. The moment she did, the energy web reignited, linking them both. The Guardian's glowing eyes dimmed. Then, right, stabilized. Participants confirmed. Standby. Asterisk asterisk. The energy blades fizzled out. The Guardian stepped back, its massive frame shifting into a neutral stance, awaiting further orders. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow. I cannot believe that worked. Jarexa smirked. Neither can I. But before they could celebrate, a new tremor shook the chamber. Jake looked up and saw the ceiling beginning to collapse. Time to get the hell out of here. The ultimate power surge. The chamber shuddered violently, sending cracks snaking up the ancient walls as massive slabs of stone began to loosen from the ceiling. The once dormant Guardian now stood frozen in a neutral stance, its massive body no longer a threat, but still pulsing faintly with residual energy. Jake Carter didn't waste time celebrating. Not when the entire underground vault was about to crush them into paste. He grabbed Jarex's wrist and pulled her toward the nearest exit tunnel, but the moment he did, the ancient pedestal behind them surged with energy once more, sending out a shockwave that nearly knocked him off his feet. Jake turned, eyes widening. The glyphs had begun flickering erratically, their glow surging and dimming as if trapped in a malfunctioning loop. Princess, what the hell is happening? Jarex's golden eyes narrowed. The rite was not properly completed. Jake groaned, running a hand down his face. Let me guess. That means bad things. She nodded sharply. The vault's energy reserves were disturbed when we interrupted the process. The system is trying to stabilize, but without a full extraction, the excess energy is. Boom! A violent blast of golden lightning erupted from the pedestal, arcing wildly across the chamber. One bolt grazed the Guardian's frozen body, sending a wave of energy cascading through its ancient frame. The Guardian's eyes flared red again. Critical instability detected. Resealing the vault. Jake's blood ran cold. Resealing. Jarex's face tightened with alarm. It's initiating a lockdown. Jake turned just in time to see massive obsidian doors slamming shut at the only known exit. Ancient mechanisms groaned, massive gears twisting into place as a barrier of reinforced stone sealed them inside. A tight ball of dread formed in his stomach. That's bad. That's really bad. Jarexa hissed something in Veltraxian, her claws flexing as she turned back toward the overloaded pedestal. There is only one way to stop this. Jake exhaled sharply. Let me guess. We have to complete the extraction. She met his gaze, her expression grim. Yes, but this time, we must go beyond stabilization. We must fully integrate the energy. Jake blinked. Wait. What does fully integrate mean? Jarexa hesitated, which immediately set off alarm bells in Jake's head. Princess, what does that mean? Her jaw clenched before she finally spoke. It means the energy must be absorbed into a living host. Jake stared. And let me guess, you mean me. Jarexa took a measured breath. I cannot take in more than my core can handle. You, however, have already proven to be compatible with the transfer. Jake swore. Loudly. Nope. No way. I don't even know what this stuff is, and now you want to shove it into my body. What if it kills me? Jarexa gave him a pointed look. What if we do nothing? The vault will collapse, and we will be crushed. Or worse, the system will see us as anomalies and vaporize us. Jake threw up his hands. Fantastic choices. Love this job. But deep down, he knew she was right. They had one chance, and only seconds to act before the vault's defenses activated their final protocol. Jake inhaled deeply, steadying himself. All right, Princess. Let's do this. The final transfer. Jarexa nodded once, then moved swiftly to the pedestal. The moment she placed her palm against the central engraving, the glyphs ignited, casting the entire chamber in a golden glow. The air thickened, pulsing with a force so intense it felt like standing at the heart of a supernova. Jake stepped forward and placed his own hand beside hers. The instant his skin touched the stone, an overwhelming current of power tore through his body. He barely bit back a scream as his veins burned, the raw surge of energy invading every nerve, every muscle. His vision darkened at the edges, and for a terrifying moment, he thought he was going to be ripped apart. But then, Jarexa's hand closed over his wrist. Her voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Focus, Carter. Do not fight it. Control it." Jake's mind reeled, but he forced himself to steady his breathing. He concentrated, shifting his focus inward, feeling the energy instead of resisting it. Something shifted. The pain didn't fade, but it changed. No longer wild and uncontrollable, but malleable. He could feel it responding to him, adapting, almost like it was waiting for him to accept it. Jake gritted his teeth. "Fine, then. If you're sticking around, you play by my rules." With a final mental push, he reached out and willed the energy to stabilize. The vault exploded in light, the birth of something new. When the brilliance finally dimmed, Jake was still standing. His breath came in ragged gulps, sweat dripping down his face. But he was alive. More than that, he felt different. Stronger, sharper, like a current of raw power was still humming beneath his skin, waiting to be unleashed. Jarexa stared at him, her expression unreadable. "You survived." Jake blinked. "I think so." He flexed his fingers, testing his limbs. No extra arms, no glowing eyes. That's a good sign. But then, a small arc of golden lightning crackled between his fingertips. Jake's heart stopped. Jarexa smirked. "Correction. You survived, and you changed." Before Jake could process what the hell that meant, the vault rumbled one last time, and the massive stone doors suddenly groaned open, releasing a flood of fresh air into the collapsing chamber. The lockdown was over. They were free. Jake exhaled sharply, then turned to Jarexa with a tired grin. "You owe me a drink after this." She chuckled, shaking her head. "You may require more than just a drink, human." Jake sighed. "Oh, great. What now?" Zarex's golden gaze flickered, scanning him carefully. "You are not just a soldier anymore." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Then what am I?" She stepped closer, her voice soft but certain. "You are something new. A new alliance, and a new power." The underground vault shuddered one last time, sending cracks snaking up the massive walls. Dust and debris rained from above, but the once destructive energy that had threatened to consume the chamber had been neutralized. Jake Carter stood in the center of the ancient pedestal, his body humming with an unfamiliar power. His heartbeat was steady, but beneath his skin, he could feel something else, a current of raw energy, alive in a way he had never felt before. Jarexa watched him carefully, her golden eyes unreadable. The Veltraxian princess, once on the brink of energy collapse, now stood strong and composed, fully restored by the completed rite. Jake lifted a hand experimentally, watching as golden arcs of energy flickered between his fingertips, like lightning waiting to be called. His breath caught in his throat. What the hell had they just done to him? The aftermath of the rite. Jarexa finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Your physiology absorbed the excess energy." Jake frowned. "Absorbed? You mean this is permanent?" She tilted her head, studying him. "Perhaps. No human has ever undergone the rite before. Your body should not have survived the integration process." Jake let out a breathless laugh, rubbing his temples. "Yeah, well, tell that to my nervous system, because I feel like I just drank a star." He rolled his shoulders, testing his muscles. He felt stronger, lighter, as if gravity itself had loosened its grip on him. Every motion felt faster, more controlled. His reflexes were sharper, his perception heightened. And yet, at the back of his mind, he could sense something else, a flickering presence, a reservoir of power waiting to be tapped into. Jarexa took a step closer, reaching for his wrist. The moment her fingers touched his pulse, a soft spark of golden light flashed between them. She pulled back, her expression unreadable. Your body is adapting faster than I expected. That is concerning. Jake raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Well, let me be the first to say, I have no idea what's going on either. Jarexa studied him for another long moment before finally shaking her head. We should leave. The vault is unstable, and we have already drawn too much attention. She wasn't wrong. The massive stone doors of the vault were still open, revealing a tunnel leading back to the surface. But from beyond, Jake could hear the distant sounds of approaching forces, the Veltraxian royal guards, no doubt responding to the massive energy surge that had just lit up the planet's entire underground network like a beacon. Jake let out a tired sigh. And here I was, hoping for a nap. The return to the surface. They moved quickly, climbing the ancient stone steps that led back to the surface palace. The deeper they ascended, the cool darkness of the vault gave way to the sharp contrast of the blazing twin suns of Veltrax 7. The moment they emerged from the ruins, they were met by an army of Veltraxian warriors, their armor gleaming in the sunlight, their weapons drawn. Jake tensed, instinctively shifting his weight into a combat-ready stance, but before he could react, Jarexa raised her hand, signaling them to hold. The warriors hesitated, then lowered their weapons. From their ranks, a towering figure emerged. General Kalos, the head of the Veltraxian military, stepped forward, his scaled features twisted in a mix of anger and confusion. His sharp golden eyes flicked between Jarexa and Jake, then settled on the still glowing glyphs on the entrance behind them. His voice was deep and commanding. What have you done, princess? Jarexa met his gaze without flinching. I have ensured our people's survival. Kayla's eyes narrowed. By desecrating the sacred vault. She took a step forward, her presence radiating authority. The rite was incomplete. The power was destabilizing. If we had not acted, it would have collapsed upon itself, and taken the palace with it. Kalos' gaze flickered toward Jake, his expression shifting. And the human, why does he still stand? Jarexa hesitated only a second before answering. Because he is no longer just a human. The warriors murmured among themselves, shifting uneasily. Kalos' expression darkened. Explain. Jake crossed his arms, exhaling. Yeah, princess. I'd love to hear this explanation too. Jarexa turned to face him fully, her golden gaze sharp. You are not merely an outsider anymore. You are now a vessel. Jake's stomach tightened. A vessel for what? Zarex's lips pressed into a thin line. For the power of the ancestors. Silence settled over the group. Jake let out a low whistle. Oh, great. So I'm walking around with a battery of ancient alien energy in my bloodstream. That's just fantastic. Kalos' expression darkened further. That energy does not belong to you, human. Jake sighed. Trust me, big guy, I wasn't exactly lining up for it. The general's hand dropped to his weapon. The energy of the ancestors must remain within Veltraxian bloodlines. Jake raised a brow. And what exactly do you suggest we do about that? Because unless you've got a reverse switch on your sacred vault, I'm not exactly in control of what's happening here. Kalos' muscles tensed, but before he could draw his blade, Jarexa intervened. Enough. The single word was sharp, commanding, and absolute. Kalos froze, his jaw tightening, but he did not move against her. Jarexa turned back to Jake. You will return to the human fleet for now. We must understand what has changed within you, before we decide what comes next. Jake studied her for a long moment before nodding. Fine, but let's make one thing clear. She arched a scaled brow. Oh. Jake stepped forward, his own golden glowing fingers flexing at his side. I might not have chosen this power, but now that I have it, I decide what happens next. A flicker of amusement crossed her face, spoken like a warrior. Kalos did not look pleased, But he did not argue. The Veltrexian guards parted, making way for the path leading back to the human fleet's diplomatic base. Jake let out a breath, casting one last glance at the ancient vault behind them before turning back toward his own people. He had come here as just another soldier. Now, he was something else entirely. And whatever that meant, the galaxy was about to find out.